Iceland is usually introduced through scale black lava fields, white glaciers, waterfalls dropping from high cliffs, and volcanoes that continue to reshape the ground. But living in Iceland is not experienced from a drone. It begins much closer in a warm kitchen before sunrise, at a harbor where ropes are stiff with salt, on a road where the weather decides whether a journey can continue, and in a public pool where neighbors meet while steam rises into cold air. This is a country of just under 400,000 people, with almost 2/3 living in the capital region. The famous landscapes are real, but they are only the setting. Daily life is built through thousands of ordinary decisions: how to heat a house, when to leave for work, how to read the wind, where to place a road, when a fishing boat should return, and how a community keeps moving when daylight becomes brief. To understand Iceland, we will not begin at the top of a volcano. We will begin at a front door. On a winter morning outside Reykjavik, the street may still be dark when the first lights appear behind the windows. A resident turns on a tap. Hot water runs through the house. A coat is lifted from a hook. Wet gloves from the previous day rest near a radiator. Outside, the wind pushes fine rain against the glass. Inside the room is steady, quiet, and warm. That contrast is one of the foundations of life here. The same geological forces that create geothermal systems beneath Iceland also provide heat for most domestic heating. The landscape is not simply endured. It is studied, piped, measured, and turned into part of the daily routine. In many countries, heating is something people notice mainly when a bill arrives or a boiler fails. In Iceland, the story reaches much deeper. Around 9/10 of the energy used for domestic heating comes from geothermal sources. Hot water drawn from underground or groundwater, heated at geothermal power plants, travels through district systems, enters neighborhoods, and moves through radiators and taps. The route may be invisible, but its presence can be felt in the first moments of the day. Picture a row of homes under a low winter sky. A person clears moisture from a window. Another places shoes where they can dry. A child pulls on an insulated jacket. The details are small: the soft click of a radiator, the sound of water in a pipe, the sudden gust when a door opens. Together, these details show how infrastructure becomes comfort. This system did not appear because Iceland wanted to create a modern image of a green nation. Large-scale geothermal heating grew from practical concerns. Imported fuel was costly. Local heat offered a domestic resource with more stable pricing. Over time, wells were drilled, pipelines were extended, and district heating became part of the architecture of everyday life. Yet the system is not identical everywhere. Areas without geothermal district heating rely mainly on electricity, whether through direct electric heating or electric district systems. That difference matters because Iceland is not one uniform field of hot water. The geology beneath each region shapes the options available above it. A household in the capital region may receive heat differently from one in a settlement farther east or in the West Fjords. This is where geography becomes personal. It influences the pipes below the street, the way a room is kept comfortable, the design of a utility network, and the choices made by local authorities. Volcanoes and geothermal fields may dominate the national image, but their most intimate expression can be a towel drying overnight or a warm floor beneath bare feet. Geothermal energy also reaches beyond private homes. It is used for swimming pools, snow melting, agriculture, fish, farming, and industrial processes. The technology can look impressive from a distance, but its purpose is often basic: create stable conditions in a climate that does not always offer them naturally. A house here does not defeat winter. It creates a boundary against it. Walls, insulation, heating, waterproof clothing, and careful maintenance work together. When rain arrives sideways, when snow turns to ice, or when daylight fades early, the home becomes more than shelter. It becomes the point from which daily life can continue. After a storm, that boundary may need attention. A resident walks around the outside of a building, looks at a loose fitting, clears a drain, and tests a door that has been pushed repeatedly by the wind. Water taps against the roof. Gravel has shifted along the path. A thin crust of ice has formed where yesterday there was only rain. Nothing in the scene is dramatic, yet maintenance is one of the clearest ways people respond to climate. The action is repeated across different kinds of homes. Seals wear, hinges loosen, salt and moisture reach exposed surfaces. A small problem ignored in calm weather can become a larger one during the next storm. Preparation therefore enters the calendar: inspect, repair, dry, secure, and check again. Inside, the same logic appears in quieter forms. Coats need a place to release moisture. Entrances collect water and grit. Windows must hold warmth while allowing a view of conditions outside. Storage is organized around layers of clothing and equipment that may be needed on the same day. These details reveal that comfort is not created by geothermal heat alone. Energy provides warmth, but the building and the people inside it must manage wind moisture and rapid changes. The meaning of a warm Icelandic home is not that nature has been removed. It is that many small systems are working together well enough for ordinary life to continue. Iceland is not permanently frozen, nor is every winter day buried in deep snow. Conditions vary sharply by region and can change within hours. In Reykjavik and the south, temperatures often move above and below freezing, leaving wet roads and icy surfaces. In the north and the west fjords, heavier snow can reshape streets and mountain passes. People do not follow one fixed winter routine. They check conditions, adjust, and keep alternatives ready. A person preparing to leave home may look first at the sky, then at the weather forecast, and finally at official road information. The action is simple, choosing when and how to travel, but it carries the knowledge that conditions are never background information. Weather is part of the schedule. The warmth beneath Icelandic homes also supports one of the country's most recognizable social spaces, the swimming pool. In a small town, the pool may sit near a school, a sports hall, or a cluster of houses. Steam rises above the water while the surrounding hills remain cold. A swimmer lowers into a hot tub. Two neighbors continue a conversation. Children move between lanes and shallow water. The air is sharp against wet skin, but the water holds a steady heat. Swimming pools, hot tubs, and bathing places are deeply connected to Icelandic culture. In 2025, Icelandic swimming pool culture was added to UNESCO's representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The recognition emphasized pools as public spaces where generations and people from different walks of life come together to swim, exercise, talk, spend time with others, or enjoy solitude. The sensory contrast is immediate: bare feet on a cold surface, steam moving across the face, voices softened by water, and the pale light of winter above the pool. This is geothermal energy translated into community life. In a large city, the pool may serve hundreds of people each day. In a small settlement, it can carry even greater social weight. The same place may support school lessons, exercise, relaxation, and informal conversation. It is not necessary to call every pool the center of a community, but many offer something increasingly rare in modern life: a shared space where people return regularly without needing a special reason. This matters in a country where distance can separate one town from the next. A pool, a harbor, a school, or a grocery store may become more than a single-purpose building. Each one helps hold the local rhythm together. The heat then has moved through several layers. It began beneath the ground. It entered a pipe. It warmed a home. It filled a pool. And finally, it created a place where people could see one another. The meaning is not found in the steam itself, but in what the steam allows people to do. Winter changes that rhythm again. In December, Reykjavik receives only a few hours of daylight. Farther north, the seasonal contrast is even more pronounced. Summer brings nights that never become fully dark across much of the country, while winter compresses outdoor activity into a narrow band between long periods of darkness. But darkness is not an empty space. It changes the order of actions. Before sunrise, a bus moves through illuminated streets. Headlights reflect on wet pavement. A cyclist passes beneath street lamps. Inside an apartment, someone eats breakfast while the window remains black. The clock says morning, but the body receives fewer visual signals that the day has begun. People compensate with routine. Work and school continue according to the clock. Indoor lighting becomes part of the morning. Reflective clothing matters more. Vehicles require preparation. Weather and road conditions are checked because they can change the shape of the day. A parent fastening a child's coat is performing an ordinary task. Yet the heavy fabric, the reflective strip, the waterproof boots, and the timing of departure all reveal an environment that requires attention. Outside, wind may erase the comfort created indoors within seconds. The first breath can feel metallic and cold. Snow may crunch underfoot, or rain may collect along the curb. The body understands the season before the mind has fully awakened. The short day also changes how light is valued. When the sun rises low above the horizon, it does not always create the bright clarity imagined in travel photographs. Clouds may reduce the day to a gray glow. A break in the weather can suddenly transform a street, a harbor, or a mountain slope. People look up. The light has become an event because it is temporary. During this period, work must fit around conditions rather than around a romantic idea of winter. Snow crews begin before much of the city is awake. Drivers watch for ice. Harbor workers start in darkness. Shops and offices create their own brightness. Outdoor tasks may be moved forward, delayed, or shortened. In a fishing town, the difference between darkness and daylight may matter less than the condition of the sea. On a farm, it may affect when animals are checked or equipment is moved. In Reykjavik, it may influence the busiest travel hours. The season is shared, but the actions it produces are not identical. The emotional effect of winter should not be reduced to a simple story of hardship. People build habits around it. Homes become gathering places. Pools remain active. Cafes, libraries, schools, sports halls, and cultural spaces offer light and company. Candles appear in windows. Meals take longer. Conversation becomes part of the way a dark evening is inhabited rather than merely survived. At the same time, it would be false to pretend that the season has no cost. Bad weather can close roads and cancel journeys. Ice can make short distances hazardous. Wind can disrupt plans. A community's ability to continue is not proof that conditions are easy. It is evidence that routine services and relationships have been built to absorb difficulty. Then slowly the light returns. In late winter and spring, each week expands the usable day. Morning arrives earlier. Children leave school before darkness. Work that was postponed becomes possible. Snowmelt gathers along roads and rivers. The sensory world changes from frozen surfaces and muffled streets to dripping roofs, moving water, and longer shadows. By summer, the transformation is complete. Across most of Iceland, the sun still dips below the horizon, but the nights remain bright with twilight. A person may finish dinner and still have hours of usable light. Fishing, construction, farming, maintenance, and recreation can extend later. Curtains or sleep masks become useful for people who need darkness indoors. This seasonal reversal is one of Iceland's deepest daily contrasts. People do not live in permanent darkness or endless sun. They move between the two, adjusting the shape of the day again and again. Beyond the capital region, the coast gives Iceland another rhythm. Almost 2/3 of the population lives in the capital region, but the remaining communities are spread around fjords, bays, peninsulas, farming areas, and exposed ports. Many municipalities are small. At the beginning of 2026, 26 of Iceland's 62 municipalities had fewer than 1,000 residents. The numbers matter because they change how work services and social life are organized. At a harbor before departure, a deckhand checks a rope. Another worker watches the movement of the boat against the pier. Metal knocks softly against metal. Gulls circle above stacked equipment. The smell of fuel mixes with salt and cold air. A hand pulls a glove tighter before touching a wet surface. The action is practical. Prepare the vessel, secure the equipment, read the conditions. Behind that action is a larger system. Iceland's official statistics track landed catch its value and use fishing vessels. Fish, processing, employment, profitability, and the export of marine products. The industry is modern and connected to international markets, but at the level of the harbor, it still begins with weather timing and physical work. A fishing boat leaving port creates a sequence that has been repeated in different forms for centuries. The harbor wall falls behind. The engine settles into a steady vibration. On-deck movement becomes more deliberate as the water opens. The coastline that looked protective from shore begins to feel small. For the people working there, the sea is neither a symbol nor a postcard. It is a workplace with changing risks. Wind direction, wave height, visibility equipment, regulations, fuel, and market conditions all influence what happens next. Skill is measured not only by the ability to catch fish, but by the ability to return safely and preserve quality. When a vessel comes back, another sequence begins. Lines are thrown. Boxes move. Fish are weighed, sorted, chilled, processed, or sent onward. Water runs across the working surface. Knives, machinery, and gloved hands create a precise rhythm. The sensory details are cold and immediate: crushed ice, bright scales, hydraulic noise, rubber boots, and the sharp smell of the catch. The meaning of this work extends beyond the boat. In some towns, the harbor supports repair services, transport processing administration, and local shops. A change in fishing activity can travel through the community. A successful season may create stability. A difficult season may expose how dependent a small settlement can be on a limited number of employers. This is why food in Iceland cannot be separated from geography. Marine products move from vessels into processing, refrigeration, transport kitchens, and export markets. In 2024, Iceland exported more than 600,000 tons of marine products, with cod producing the highest export value among individual species. But the national figures become meaningful only when they return to a person working at a dock, in a processing room, or at a kitchen counter. In a home kitchen, the scale changes again. A piece of fish meets a hot pan. Butter or oil begins to move. Steam rises. A knife cuts potatoes or vegetables. The sound is quieter than the harbor, but the connection remains. What began as labor in cold air becomes warmth at a table. This does not mean every Icelandic family eats the same food or follows one traditional menu. Modern Iceland is diverse, and its kitchens reflect local habits, international influences, personal budgets, and changing tastes. The documentary value lies not in presenting one meal as the national meal, but in showing how access to the sea continues to shape what is familiar and available. The same caution applies to agriculture and greenhouse production. Geothermal energy can support cultivation and other agricultural uses, but Iceland still imports a wide range of food. Local production works within limits created by climate, daylight, land, and cost. Again, geography creates options and restrictions at the same time. At the table, these systems become almost invisible. A person lifts a fork. Conversation continues. Outside, the harbor lights remain visible through the window. The meaning of the meal is not dramatic. It is continuity. The sea has entered the home without losing its connection to work. Small communities make those connections easier to see. Consider a coastal town pressed between a fjord and steep mountains. The road may enter from one direction and leave through a tunnel, a pass, or a narrow strip beside the water. Houses gather near the harbor. The school, grocery store, pool, workshop, and municipal office stand within a short distance of one another. A person opens a shop in the morning. A delivery arrives. Children cross the same street that harbor workers used earlier. An older resident stops for a conversation. A bus or service vehicle links the town to the next community. Each action is ordinary, but in a small population, the absence of one service can be felt quickly. This creates a different scale of interdependence. The person repairing an engine may also coach a sports team. A teacher may meet students' parents at the pool. A shopkeeper may hear about difficult road conditions before every customer arrives. These overlaps should not be romanticized as perfect closeness. Small communities can also face limited services, housing pressure, and the departure of younger residents. But the overlaps reveal how many roles are required to keep a town functioning. Distance gives those roles additional weight. A specialist appointment may require travel. A delayed ferry closed pass or canceled flight can change a week. Supplies may arrive according to weather rather than convenience. The person planning a journey must think beyond kilometers. They consider wind visibility, road surface, and whether the route crosses an exposed section. At a roadside pullout, the sensory world can change in minutes. Rain moves across the windshield. A gust rocks the vehicle. The mountains disappear behind cloud, then return. A road condition update becomes as important as the map. The action, waiting, turning back, or continuing slowly, shows a form of judgment that visitors sometimes underestimate. National roads connect communities around much of the island, but connection does not erase remoteness. Secondary roads, tunnels, ferries, and local airports remain essential. A place can be linked on paper and still feel distant in winter. That distance also shapes identity. A town may be known for a harbor, a particular landscape, a processing plant, an art scene, or a history of adapting to avalanches and storms. Residents do not simply live in remote Iceland. They live in specific places with distinct economies and memories. The documentary must therefore resist using one village as a symbol for the entire country. Reykjavik is not the Westfjords. A port in the east is not a farming community in the south. A settlement near an active volcanic system does not represent the risk faced by every household. The closer we look, the more Iceland becomes a collection of local realities joined by national systems. One of those systems is information. Weather forecasts, road reports, avalanche assessments, volcanic monitoring, and hydrological measurements help people decide what is safe. Technology does not remove uncertainty, but it gives daily life a way to respond to it. Nowhere is that response more visible than around Iceland's volcanoes. A camera often shows an eruption from a distance, a red fissure against a dark sky, lava moving across old rock smoke, and gas rising into the air. The image is powerful, but it can create the false impression that the whole country lives beside open lava. In reality, volcanic risk is local, changing, and closely monitored. The Icelandic Meteorological Office uses multidisciplinary, geophysical, and geochemical data, previous observations, and expert assessment to evaluate activity. Its Volcano Alert Level system has 4 levels from normal background activity to an imminent or ongoing eruption. Hazard maps then identify risks for specific systems and zones. The place matters. A warning for the Svartsengi volcanic system on the Reykjanes Peninsula is not a warning for every town in Iceland. The person reading the map must understand where the boundary lies, what has changed, and whether travel or work is affected. Imagine a road near a monitored area. A driver slows at a sign. A worker checks an update before entering a zone. A family farther away continues an ordinary evening because the assessment does not apply to their neighborhood. The action is not panic, it is interpretation. The sensory details around volcanic unrest can be unsettling. Small earthquakes felt through a floor, a distant glow closed roads, or the sound of an official alert. But the meaning lies in the systems built around those signals. Sensors send data. Specialists compare patterns. Authorities define access. Residents make decisions based on information that may change quickly. Monitoring cannot promise certainty. The alert level can change without passing through each intermediate stage, and volcanic hazards can occur without warning. Preparedness is therefore not a single plan stored on a shelf. It is a relationship between scientific observation, public communication infrastructure, and individual action. For communities directly affected, the consequences can be profound. Roads may close, homes may be evacuated, workplaces can become inaccessible. The emotional cost cannot be reduced to a lesson about national resilience. Adaptation does not erase loss. At the same time, most daily life across Iceland continues outside an active hazard zone. Children attend school, shops open, boats leave harbor, pools fill. The country's relationship with volcanoes is therefore neither constant fear nor careless confidence. It is a layered awareness: know the system, know the location, respect the boundary, and continue when conditions allow. This approach changes how we understand the phrase living near volcanoes. It does not mean standing beside lava. It means building roads and services, with risk in mind, maintaining emergency communication, listening to specialists, and accepting that the map beneath a familiar landscape can change. The ground is active, but life above it depends on discipline. Glaciers create a different kind of presence. From a distance, an Icelandic glacier appears almost motionless. Its surface reflects light. Ridges and crevasses seem fixed. But ice moves, melts, feeds rivers, and can interact with volcanic and geothermal systems beneath it. Near a monitored river, a station records water level, temperature, and electrical conductivity. A pressure sensor measures the level. Solar panels supply the station, and data are transferred for specialist review. Alarms can be triggered when water level or conductivity reaches a defined threshold. The person maintaining that station performs careful, repetitive work. Equipment is checked. A panel is cleared. Readings are compared. Wind moves across gravel and ice. Water carries fine sediment, giving the river a dense gray color. The sound is constant and deeper than it first appears. The action may seem remote from ordinary life, but its meaning is direct. A flood linked to meltwater, water-heavy rain, ice blockage, or a subglacial volcanic or geothermal system can affect roads and bridges. Monitoring transforms distant ice and water into information that supports decisions below. Glaciers also shape work in more visible ways. Guides, researchers, road crews, rescue teams, tourism operators, and nearby communities all respond to changing conditions. The glacier is not one thing to all of them. For a visitor, it may be a destination. For a scientist, it is a moving system and a record of change. For a driver, it may be part of the watershed above the road. For a resident, it is a familiar presence whose behavior still demands respect. This is another reason the title between volcanoes and glaciers should not be understood literally. Most people do not wake each morning with lava on one side of the house and ice on the other. They live within networks influenced by both heat from geothermal systems, warnings from volcanic monitoring roads, crossing glacial rivers, and seasonal water moving from high ice toward the sea. The forces are large, but they become meaningful only when they enter a human decision. A bridge remains open. A road closes. A worker changes route. A town receives a warning. A family postpones a journey. These are the points where geography becomes life. By evening, Iceland's scale becomes smaller again. In Reykjavik, apartment windows brighten across the city. In a fishing town, the harbor settles after the last movement of machinery. In a rural home, wet clothing hangs near warmth. A swimmer leaves the pool with steam still rising behind them. A driver checks tomorrow's forecast before placing keys on a table. The country has not become less dramatic. The volcanoes remain active. The glaciers continue to move. Winter darkness and summer light still reshape the year. The ocean still rewards and resists those who work on it. But a life is not built from dramatic moments alone. It is built when hot water reaches a house before dawn, when a snow crew clears a route, when a harbor worker secures a line, when a teacher opens a school in a small town, when a specialist reads a sensor, when neighbors share a pool while wind moves across the roof, when a family changes a plan because the forecast says the safer choice is to wait. These actions do not conquer Iceland's landscape, they create room within it. That may be the central lesson of living in Iceland. Adaptation is not a heroic performance carried out once. It is a quiet system of repeated choices. Infrastructure carries heat. Information carries warning. Communities carry knowledge. People continue because they know when to move, when to prepare, and when to stop. The sensory memories of the country may be grand: the crack of ice, the roar of water, the glow of lava, the wind crossing an empty plain. Yet the meaning is often found in softer sounds: a radiator warming a kettle beginning to boil, boots placed beside a door conversation rising from a public pool, or a boat engine returning through darkness. Between volcanoes and glaciers, life is not suspended between two disasters. It is grounded in homes, work routines, and relationships. And that is how people build a life here, not by making nature smaller, but by learning how to live responsibly within its scale. If this journey helped you see Iceland beyond its famous landscapes, continue with the 4K travel documentary playlist from Best Hidden Places, where geography becomes meaningful through the people who call it home.